Hey beer friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tammy and I talk about beer and brewing and wine and studying for my Cicerone exam and kind of whatever else just comes into my head as I'm talking. The last few videos I've done, I've talked about the recent family cruise that we did to Southwestern Caribbean, and so today I'm touching a little bit on our stops in Panama and Costa Rica. So the way it works with Panama, which I did not realize really until we got closer to that port, was that we were only doing a partial transit, which is where you come in from the Caribbean side and then you go through the locks, and then the boat or the ship kind of cruises around the lake. It's called Gatun Lake, and then you come back out, and then the ship kind of continues on. And the only way for you to actually get off the ship in Panama is if you book like a shore excursion. The canal itself is really cool. You basically wait in line at while you're still at sea, and everyone gets up super early. I think they open some of the areas for you to go out and watch on the decks at 5:30 a.m. or 6 a.m. We were up at 6 a.m. and it's just the decks are just packed with people because everyone is watching this process. And as you're getting closer to the canal itself, you're passing under this really well-known bridge, and so it's there's always something to be watching, even if you're not in the canal proper, I guess, in the locks proper. There's still a lot to see. And what I also thought was really interesting was that the entire time that we're doing this, they're narrating, someone on the bridge is narrating what's happening. And so they're talking about all the other ships that are out to sea. They're just anchored, waiting for their turn to go through the canal. So basically you have to reserve your spot. Otherwise you pull up and you wait. And because we're on a cruise ship, we got priority because this trip has been planned, a year in advance at least. So if you're waiting, you could wait for 2 to 3 days just out at sea until it's your turn. And the minimum, gosh, I can't remember, but I want to say the minimum cost to transit the canal is $100,000 US, I think. So basically there's two things you can do. You can do partial transit, where you go through one side and then you just come back out, or you go all the way across to the Pacific side. And some ships actually only do a partial transit, and then they pull up to a train and they unload their cargo, and then the train takes it to the Pacific side, and it's much cheaper to do that than sail all the way across. Obviously though, it's much cheaper to sail all the way across than to go all the way down around South America. So just really interesting. And they were also saying that because there are so many ships that want to cross through the canal, and every time you come into a port somewhere, you usually have to have a local pilot come on board to help guide you through the water. The ship pilots in Panama are I can't even remember how much they made. I want to say they made $20,000 a month or something. It was just some astronomical amount of money to do this, because they're so skilled and there's so much money flowing through that canal. So anyway, I digress. But basically, you come up to the locks and you pull into this little chamber, and then a gate kind of closes behind you, and it fills up with water. And the water is held in a reservoir. So basically it fills it up and then it puts it back in the reservoir. So it's always using kind of the same water. And we were in what's considered the newer locks, and then there's the older locks, and the older locks are the walls are much closer to where you are, so you could actually almost reach out and touch them. Ours were a little bit further away, and obviously it's not smart to reach out and lean over and do anything like that. But yeah, we were told it was going to take maybe an hour, and honestly, from the time we got into the first lock to the last lock and we were coming into the lake, it was maybe 30 minutes. It was so fast. So yeah, it was super, super cool. So once we got into the lake, we pulled, kind of close to shore, and we dropped anchor, and then we had to take what's called a tender boat, which is a smaller water taxi, to the shore so that we could get on our bus for our excursion. We chose to do just kind of the basic, like Panama City, Panama history tour. So we were on the Caribbean side and we had to drive all the way across the country basically to the Pacific side, and that still only took about an hour. So we stopped a few places along the way. We visited like some ruins, and that's where I had my first beer because they had a little snack stand, you know, food place. And I think I ordered the only beer that they had, and I brought one back. So I ordered a Panama, the National Brewery of Panama, a Balboa. And this is named after the explorer Balboa, who discovered Panama, I guess, for the Europeans. And it's a lager. It's like a light golden lager. Well, this beer, interestingly enough, or not, is owned by Sab Miller, which a lot of you have heard of Miller from the US, but Sab stands for South African Breweries. So that's the big conglomerate there, Sab Miller. And it's known as like the national beer of Panama. I did a little bit of research and I found that not so long ago they were actually maybe involved in some union busting and maybe murdering some union members that wanted to unionize. So, you know, just always kind of do your background checking and your Googling before you give your money to certain companies. Of course, I didn't know that at the time when I was there, so, you know, I bought a beer to bring back. I thought it was different, but then I learned that and I was like, oh, it's kind of tainted a bit. So we had a really great tour guide and he told us something that I thought was kind of funny, which was that like literally everything in Panama is named Panama. So the country is Panama, the capital city is Panama City, it's called Panama Bay, the national tree is the Panama tree, the county that the city is in is called Panama. So just like everything is Panama, and it became a joke where he'd say, well, what do you think we call this, or what do you think the name of that is? And you know, people would say, oh, I don't know, Panama. And it was sort of funny. So, you know, we got a nice little history lesson as we went through the day. And another thing that's interesting is that the economy there is tied to the US dollar. So basically one Panamanian dollar is one US dollar. So things were affordable, I would say, but maybe not like really cheap, but at least you knew when you looked at it, you didn't have to do any sort of like, you know, money conversion in your brain. It was just 1-to-1. So like that was kind of easy. So we started with the ruins and then we drove through the city, which is huge and beautiful. And it's a mix of like this old town, historic buildings and streets and everything, and then high rises and like beach club. And I think they even called it like the Miami of Panama because it's so built up and like luxurious looking. So really an interesting place to see. So we did the traditional, you know, we had to go to a church and see, you know, the Jesus and all that stuff. And then we kind of had some time to walk around. So my husband and I found what was supposed to be like an art gallery / tattoo parlor. So they weren't even open yet. Like the door was locked and someone had to let us into the building. So we went into the building and we went downstairs and we just said like, hey, can we look around? And the guy was like, sure, yeah, like we're not open yet, but you know, we're getting ready. And I was kind of bummed because I was thinking like, yeah, I would totally just get a small tattoo right now. But instead my husband took pictures of the art and he gave them his card and he bought a shirt. So like that was pretty neat. And then, yeah, we just did some shopping, and this is where I got the second beer of the day that I tried, which was just called Panama, of course. And it's funny because I bought it at the store, and on the counter when you check out is a bottle opener. So I opened it and I took it with me on the street and I was drinking it. I thought, no big deal. We haven't been anywhere yet on this trip where you're not allowed to drink in public, so I didn't think it was a problem. But as we were walking back to like our bus, our tour guide was saying, "Oh, do you have beer? Are you like, is that open?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, just maybe hide it," because we were walking past, I think like the governor's mansion, and it's on the outside. It's gated and it's guarded by, you know, armed guards. And so he's like, don't let them see you." And I was just kind of surprised because I thought, well, why is it a big deal in Panama? It's not a big deal anywhere else. So anyway, I slammed that really quick, you know, before we got on the bus, just in case. And that was kind of it. I didn't see really anything at the grocery store, like the mini mart, that was like craft. It was all, you know, big brand name lagers. They had, I think they had like the Balboa version, but an ice version. They had like Jack Daniels and Coke in cans, which I thought was kind of interesting. Yeah, so I was like, you know, I don't really need to bring a lot back. This Balboa is the only thing I brought back with me, and I tried a couple things, and that was pretty much good enough for me. So one thing that was really neat, when we got back on the ship to our cabin, we all had a little certificate that we did a partial transit of the Panama Canal, and it's signed by like our captain and like our other staff members or whatever. So I don't know what we're gonna do with these other than just know that we have them. So anyway, that was fun. So loved Panama. And then after that, the next day, we ended up in Costa Rica. Pretty much the first thing we did was leave the port, walk across the street to this really large like public park, lots of huge trees, and there was a guy there just standing there, and he was pointing out to all of the tourists where the sloths were. So Costa Rica is known for like the sloth sightings, and we saw one like almost immediately. And if I'd had a better camera, I would have gotten a better picture, but like with my eyes, I could see it pretty well. So we saw one there, and then we walked like another 20 feet and we saw another one. And so my sister-in-law were both kind of like, okay, this is what we came here for. This is what we wanted to see. So now we don't have to like worry about, you know, checking that off the list. So it was really cool and just really interesting that they're just in like a city park, just, you know, in their tree. So saw the sloth, that was exciting. Walked around town, a lot of stores open. I did the exchange rate. Okay, so $1 is equivalent to roughly $500 colognes. So very affordable as well. A lot of stores open, a lot of shops, weirdly, a lot of like appliance stores, like places where you could buy a fridge or like a washing machine, which I don't know. I just didn't really expect that there would be that kind of demand there for that many stores. Yeah, but it was really hot that day. So of course we got to a point where we're like, let's sit down and have a beer because it's hot. We want to sit. So we sat at this really cute cafe, and I actually saw a beer delivery man like making a beer delivery to these like two cafes right next to each other. So I was like, great, like that's what I want. I want that beer. The main beer that they have in Costa Rica is called Imperial, and that's what I ordered. I didn't get it in a bottle. I didn't get it in any sort of, you know, fancy glass. It came in a plastic cup. So I'm gonna trust that what I got was Imperial. And I don't know if it was on tap or he just poured it from a bottle. I have no idea. But so I got a beer, and then I think like my sister-in-law ordered like some food. I mean, you know, everything looked really nice, really well priced, things like that. So I did some research on Imperial when I got home. So it's I think the first brewery that was created in Costa Rica, and it's been around since 1924. And it says it's the world's first water positive beer, which means that at every step of the brewing process or packaging or whatever, they try to be very water conscious and cut down on their usage. And if you don't know a lot about brewing beer, it's very water intensive. So the rough math is basically like for 1 liter of beer that's produced, you need 4 to 5 liters of beer to make it, because beer itself is like 95% water, and then you've got cleaning, and it's just cleaning. There's so much cleaning that goes on in brewing, and then once you've done your mash process, then you have to add more water and rinse your grain and sparge, and so it's just so water intensive. So they say that they're the world's first water positive beer, and I've never heard that designation before, so I don't even know if anyone else has that designation. Yeah, so we had the Imperial. It was a lager. It tasted like a lager. It was, like I said, really hot out, so it was refreshing. And then, of course, this was going to be one of our last stops, and so I wanted to find a store so I could look at beer and buy some beer. So we found a grocery store, and this is one of those times where I would say that this is why I like kind of traveling on my own sometimes, because if I wanted to go to the store and spend an hour just looking at beer or wine or reading labels or comparing prices, like I would spend an hour or more. But when you're with 5 other people and it's hot out and they're bored, it's like there's all this pressure to hurry. And I was trying to like take pictures, and I was trying to like find the ones that were from Costa Rica and find something that looked interesting and check the prices. And so I was just like, I was on like just mental like overload. So I did end up getting some craft beer, and I'm really excited. I'm going to try one today. The one that I'm going to try, so I'll talk about this one first, is from a brewery called Cerveceria San Roque. And again, like it's got a really cool label. It's like a snake of some sort, and it just says it's a golden ale. So I'm assuming it's going to be similar to like a blonde. I really don't know much else about it. It just says it's crafted, brewed in Colombia. It's 4.5% ABV. And something about with every beer that you buy, we donate part of our profits to animal rescue. So like obviously that's amazing. It says it's a bottle conditioned beer, so that's exciting. Although really, like, it's hard to see, but there's really not a lot of yeast in there that I'm seeing. So, all right. So I'm going to try that one shortly. So then I moved further down the shelf, and I found some other cans that I had to have. And it says, the brewery I think is just called Costa Rica's Craft Brew Company. So this one it's a red ale, and it's, what did it say? 4.8%. So that looks fun. And really, it doesn't say much else about it. It says by buying this beer, you support craft brewing. So that's exciting. Then I found these two, and I'm curious what the difference is between these two. So this one is, I think it's called Indomito. It's an IPA, and it's 7.6% ABV. So now it just says IPA. That's it. It doesn't even tell me what kind of hops might be in here. No. But then I found this one, which is a West Coast IPA, Marbella, which means beautiful sea, pretty sea. And it is 6%. So I'm just kind of curious what the difference is between these IPAs, because I feel like if you have something just called IPA, most people assume it's probably a West Coast. If it's not a West Coast, you would label it like hazy or New England style. So I don't know, I'm curious what the difference is. And this one also does not really give me any sort of description about the ingredients in particular. Yeah. So these are really exciting. Really was happy to find these. And that is not to say that they didn't have other options as well, but I bought these because They were the most budget friendly, let's say, but I don't know. I like, again, I like the I like the label. Like this one's like beachy, obviously, and this one's got a jaguar on it. So like, you know, hey. So I'm gonna open this beer right now and see what it's like. Okay, here we go. I've had it sitting out for a couple minutes, so I hope it's not gonna be super warm. Let's see if the cap says anything. Only natural ingredients. That's it. They opened in 2017. Ooh, it smells, interesting. It smells very much almost like a Corona, which is a lager and not an ale. So there's not a lot of head. It's a nice color for a blonde, but it's actually kind of opaque. It's not super clear. It smells like, yeah, it almost smells like a Corona. Oh, that's really interesting. It's bitter. It almost tastes like it's an extract beer. And when I say that, I mean like it's brewed with malt extract, which is like a really thick syrup. And then you basically thin that out with water, and then you know, add your hops and whatever, rather than using all grain and water. It's kind of grassy. It's very light. And what did I say? It's 4.5%. Okay, but light in body. It's not, I don't dislike it. It's just not what I was expecting. I was expecting a little bit more, maybe a fuller mouthfeel, as it's a blonde, and I thought it would have a little bit of, well, actually it's a golden ale, it's not really a blonde. It would have a little bit of residual sweetness. Huh. I do see some yeast at the bottom of the bottle. But for being bottle conditioned, this is very interesting that there's like almost, there was no head and like no foam. That's very surprising. Yeah. I know I say this in every video, but I want to be drinking this like on the beach with some tacos and some guacamole, listening to the waves. Like that's what I want to be doing. That's what I want my life to be. So those were our stops in Panama and Costa Rica. Really loved both of them. Great places, great people, you know, everything was just lovely. So put it on your list, your to visit list. My next video is going to be about Grand Cayman. We visited that part of the Cayman Island chain, and we went to 2 different breweries and brought back, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 beers. So very excited to go through those with you and tell you about our little stop there. So once again, thank you for joining me and listening to me ramble about, you know, my vacation and my beer. And, you know, as I have more beer, I tend to ramble more. So I'm trying to get better about that. But I appreciate it. I appreciate you watching. And yeah, thanks for being here. Cheers. Okay, bonus content. My husband just got home from work and said he doesn't mind if I drink one of these beers. So I'm going to open this one and see what that's like. I'm excited. Okay. Okay, now this is a red ale, so it's a little, well, I guess it's a decent color. I like the carbonation level. I could smell it from here. It smells a little perfumey from the hops. So there's really nothing I would like write home about with this beer, but it's solid. And I think, so what did I say again? 4.8%. Like that's pretty like standard for like an Irish red, let's say. And that's just sort of like an even beer. Like it's not really light. It's not really dark. It's not overwhelming with the hops. It's not overwhelming with the malt. It's just kind of like middle of the road. So I think it's really well done. Which makes me excited to try the other two beers that I got from this place and see how they are. And I also, bonus content, forgot to show you this really amazing thing that we bought at the port, like, craft market. So when I go somewhere, I like to try and buy something that reminds me of where I've been. Maybe it's like something specific, like animal-wise, because I love animals, or it says the place, rather than just like like jewelry or whatever. Like I'm not gonna remember. I also don't like wearing jewelry. But anyway, so we found this person that was selling these, and she had like I think she had like a toucan, and she had like women with like their headscarf on. I mean, she had all sorts of different things. But we were like, okay, look, Costa Rica is known for like the sloth. It says Limon, which is like what I wanted. I didn't want it to just be generic and not have a name on it. And it's fuzzy, and I love it so much. So now it sits on our shelf, and I look at it and I think of when we went to Costa Rica. So anyway,